Get your dirty hands off that purse, people, like you steal, not shop. Marcus Webb's words sliced through premier fashion boutique's silence. The store manager loomed over Dorothy Washington as the 67-year-old black woman examined a $3,200 Hermes bag with quiet appreciation. His open palm cracked across her weathered cheek. Dorothy stumbled backward, her navy cardigan snagging on crystal displays. The designer bag tumbled from her hands, crashing beside her scattered belongings. Worthless old thief! Webb kicked her Patek Philippe watch across marble tile. Business cards marked Washington Holdings slid beneath silk scarves. Her phone buzzed insistently. Goldman Sachs Private Banking, fourth missed call. 23 shoppers stood frozen in horror. Teenagers lifted phones instinctively. Security cameras recorded every brutal second of what would become the most expensive slap in corporate history. Dorothy touched her bleeding lip, studying crimson on trembling fingers. Her voice emerged unnaturally calm. Are you absolutely certain about this decision? Have you ever watched someone destroy their entire world with a single moment of hatred? 17-year-old Zoe Lane had been filming a makeup tutorial when the commotion started. Now her Instagram Live captured something far more explosive. Oh my God, guys, this manager just slapped an elderly black woman. Her phone shook as viewer count jumped from 12 to 2,347 in 30 seconds. This is actually happening at Premier Fashion in Manhattan. The red welt on Dorothy's cheek bloomed like a crimson flower. She knelt slowly, gathering her belongings with methodical precision, while Webb stood over her, arms crossed in satisfaction. You saw her trying to steal, he announced to the boutique. These people always think they can get away with it. A middle-aged white woman clutched her pearls. I wondered why she was in here. Her voice carried the casual cruelty of assumed superiority. They should check her bag. Dorothy's fingers found her first-class boarding pass among the scattered items. The gold lettering read, Washington Dorothy, Private Jet Service. She folded it carefully, sliding it into her cardigan pocket. Ma'am, you need to leave immediately. Assistant manager Karen Phillips emerged from behind the counter, her voice dripping with false authority. We don't tolerate shoplifting. I haven't stolen anything, Dorothy replied quietly, retrieving her black American Express Centurion card from beneath a silk scarf. Phillips laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off marble walls. Right. Like you could afford anything in here. She snatched the card from Dorothy's hand, examining it with theatrical skepticism. Probably stolen, too. The live stream comments exploded. OMG, call the police. This is so messed up, she's bleeding. Where are the manager's premier racism? Zoe's viewer count hit 8,900. She'd never seen anything go viral this fast. Jennifer? It's Dorothy. Every head turned. Dorothy had somehow retrieved her phone, speaker volume high enough for the entire boutique to hear. The caller ID read Goldman Sachs Private Banking. I'm running a few minutes late for the board meeting. Something unexpected came up at the Premier Fashion location. Webb's confident smirk faltered. The timing felt wrong, too convenient. But old women made up stories when cornered. Everyone knew that. Mrs. Washington? The voice from the phone carried the crisp authority of serious money. Is everything all right? The helicopter is waiting at the pad. Dorothy's finger hovered over the speaker button. Her swollen lip made speaking difficult, but her words came out crystal clear. I'm experiencing some difficulty with the local management team. They seem to believe I'm here to steal rather than invest. Silence stretched through the boutique like a held breath. Phillips still clutched the black card, her knuckles white against the metal's obsidian surface. Shall I contact Mr. Hendricks about the acquisition timeline? Jennifer's voice carried through premium phone speakers with boardroom precision. Not yet, Dorothy replied, watching Webb's face carefully. I'm still gathering information about their customer service standards. A businessman near the entrance lowered his Wall Street Journal. Something about Dorothy's tone had shifted less victim, more evaluator. He pulled out his own phone, quietly filming. Store director Rachel Morrison burst through the back office doors, her heels clicking against marble like bullets. She surveyed the scene, Dorothy on her knees, blood on her lip, items scattered across the floor, 20+ customers with phones raised. What happened here? Morrison's voice carried the sharp edge of someone whose Saturday was about to become very complicated. Caught this one trying to steal, Webb replied, but his earlier confidence had evaporated. Had to use necessary force when she resisted. Morrison's eyes found the live stream count on Zoe's phone. 15,600 viewers and climbing. Her stomach dropped. Social media disasters could destroy careers in hours. Ma'am, I apologize for any confusion, Morrison began, her tone carefully neutral. Perhaps we can... Confusion? Dorothy's voice remained eerily calm as she stood, brushing dust from her cardigan. Your manager accused me of theft, struck me across the face, and kicked my personal belongings across your floor. Which part confuses you? The businessman near the entrance stepped closer, his phone capturing Morrison's increasingly pale complexion. His finance background recognized expensive watches and real leather when he saw them. The scattered items weren't costume jewelry and knockoffs. Mrs. Washington, Jennifer's voice continued from the phone. Shall I inform the board that Premier Fashion's management approach doesn't align with our investment criteria? Phillips looked down at the card in her hand. American Express Centurion. No credit limit. Invitation only. Net worth requirement. $16 million minimum. Her hands began to shake. Morrison grabbed Webb's arm, pulling him aside. Her whisper carried further than intended. Did you check her identification before assuming... I don't need to check anything, Webb interrupted, but his voice had lost its earlier venom. She was acting suspicious. By examining merchandise in a retail store? The businessman stepped forward, his camera still rolling. I'm Robert Brooks, financial analyst at Morgan Stanley. I've been watching this entire interaction. Zoe gasped. Dad? You're here? Robert nodded grimly. The meeting ended early. Good thing. He looked directly at Morrison. Your employee committed an assault on camera. In front of 17,000 live witnesses. The number hit Morrison like a physical blow. 17,000 people watched her store's reputation collapse in real time. Corporations would have questions. Lawyers would have field days. Stock prices would fluctuate. Dorothy collected her final item, a business card reading Washington Holdings, Real Estate Development. She held it up for Morrison to see. I was considering your location for potential acquisition, Dorothy said, her voice carrying new authority. Your staff has provided invaluable insight into your company culture. Morrison's world tilted. The morning memo flashed through her memory. VIP investor visit scheduled. Treat with utmost respect. She'd forgotten completely. Webb's face had gone ashen. You're the investor? Dorothy smiled, the expression made chilling by the blood still staining her lip. Was, she corrected softly. Past tense. The live stream count hit 23,000 viewers. In boardrooms across Manhattan, phones were already beginning to ring. The live stream had become a digital wildfire. Zoe's viewer count exploded past 35,000 as clips spread across TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. The hashtag #, Premier Fashion Assault climbed trending lists in real time. Breaking. Elderly black woman assaulted in Manhattan, luxury store, viral, store manager slaps. Potential investor. Watch. Racism. Caught on camera at Premier Fashion. Morrison's phone buzzed with incoming calls. Corporate headquarters, regional managers, the PR department. She declined them all, watching her career crumble through a teenager's phone screen. Jennifer, please hold, Dorothy said, ending the speaker's call. She tucked the phone into her cardigan pocket with deliberate calm. "I'd like to observe how this situation develops." Webb's panic was visible now. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the boutique's air conditioning. His earlier confidence had evaporated like morning mist. The woman he'd dismissed as a shoplifter was speaking to Goldman Sachs about board meetings and helicopters. "Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here." Webb's voice cracked slightly. "The wrong foot?" Dorothy touched her swollen cheek, drawing attention to the darkening bruise. "Is that what you call assault?" Other customers began whispering among themselves. The middle-aged woman who'd earlier supported Webb now looked uncomfortable, glancing nervously at the cameras recording her previous comments. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said quietly to her companion, trying to distance herself from the escalating situation. Security guard Thomas Williams approached cautiously. 23 years on the job had taught him to read situations. This one screamed a lawsuit. The elderly woman's composure unnerved him more than screaming would have. "Ma'am, do you need medical attention?" His voice carried genuine concern. "Thank you, Thomas." Dorothy read his name tag with surprising familiarity. "I appreciate your professionalism. You're the only employee here who's shown basic human decency." Williams blinked. How did she know his name? They'd never met. Something about her tone suggested familiarity with his employment record. Phillips still clutched the Centurion card, her hands trembling visibly. "This has to be fake," she whispered to Webb. "Old black ladies don't have cards like this. The credit limit alone—" "Give it back," Morrison hissed, her voice tight with growing panic. "Now." But Phillips had entered full meltdown mode. The implications of the card were sinking in, and denial felt safer than acceptance. "She's probably some kind of professional scammer. They train them to act all dignified and sophisticated to fool people." "And what?" Dorothy's voice cut through the whispers like a blade. "Train us to do what, exactly?" The boutique fell silent. Every phone camera swiveled toward Phillips, who realized her words had carried much further than intended. 20 devices captured her stammering response. I didn't mean—" "Please, continue." Dorothy stepped closer, her presence suddenly commanding despite her modest height and bloodied lip. "Explain what they train us to do." Zoe adjusted her phone angle, sensing content gold. Her dad nodded approvingly from behind his own camera. The teenager was documenting history, and she knew it. "She means scammers," Webb interjected desperately, trying to salvage the situation. "All kinds of people run scams these days." "But she didn't say scammers," Robert Brooks interrupted with surgical precision. "She said they and them. Very specific pronouns with very specific implications." The businessman's legal background showed. Years of depositions had taught him to dissect language and expose hidden meanings. His camera captured Phillips' face as comprehension dawned. Morrison's second phone started ringing, then her smartwatch. The digital avalanche had reached corporate headquarters faster than she'd imagined possible. Modern communication meant viral disasters moved at light speed. "Mrs. Morrison?" A nervous sales associate approached from the register area. "Channel 7 News just called the store line. They want a statement about the premier fashion assault video." The words hit Morrison like physical blows. News stations. This had jumped from social media to mainstream media coverage in under an hour. Corporate nightmare scenarios didn't move this fast in training seminars. "Tell them no comment," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "They said they're sending a crew anyway." ETA 10 minutes. Dorothy smiled slightly, the expression made unsettling by the dried blood at the corner of her mouth. How thorough of them. Her phone buzzed with a text message visible to everyone nearby. "Board helicopter ready for immediate departure. Weather clear for Manhattan landing. -J." Webb's last shred of hope evaporated. Real helicopters, real board meetings, real consequences for his assumptions. I'm actually what, Mr. Webb? Dorothy's tone remained conversational, almost gentle. Please, finish your thought. I'm curious what you think I actually am. The store manager's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Everything he'd believed about this woman was crumbling. The modest clothing, the careful way she'd examined merchandise, her quiet dignity, none of it fit the stereotypes he'd built his worldview around. The police are here, someone announced from the entrance. 2 NYPD officers entered, surveying the scene with professional caution. The older officer, Sergeant Martinez, immediately noted the cameras, the blood on Dorothy's lip, and the tension crackling through the expensive air. We received multiple reports of an assault, Martinez announced, his voice carrying decades of authority. False alarm, Webb said quickly, desperation creeping into his voice. Just a customer service misunderstanding. Excuse me, Dorothy interrupted politely. Officers, I'm Dorothy Washington. This man struck me across the face approximately 20 minutes ago. The incident was recorded by multiple witnesses and is currently broadcasting live to over 40,000 viewers. She gestured toward Zoe's phone, still streaming to an audience that continued growing exponentially. Martinez examined Dorothy's face with practiced eyes. The swelling was consistent with an open-handed slap. Fresh blood on her lip, now dried. No defensive wounds, suggesting she hadn't fought back or escalated the violence. Sir, I need to see some identification. Martinez addressed Webb directly. This is harassment, Phillips interjected, her voice shrill with panic. She was shoplifting. We had every right. Ma'am, I didn't ask you. Martinez's tone carried decades of street authority. And assault isn't justified by suspected shoplifting. Sir, identification. Now. Webb fumbled for his wallet, hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it twice. Morrison stepped forward, corporate damage control instincts finally kicking in despite her shock. Officers, I'm Rachel Morrison, store director. Perhaps we can handle this matter internally through our corporate channels. Ma'am, assault is a criminal matter, the younger officer, Patrolman Rodriguez, replied firmly. We don't handle criminal matters internally. That's what courts are for. Dorothy's phone rang again. She answered on speaker, volume deliberately high enough for everyone to hear. Dorothy? This is Charles Hendricks. The voice carried the unmistakable authority of a corner office. I'm watching the live stream with the board. Are you seriously injured? Hendricks. Morrison's blood turned to ice water. Charles Hendricks, CEO of Lux Retail Group, Premier Fashion's parent company. The man who could end careers with a single email. I'm fine, Charles, Dorothy replied with remarkable calm. Your Manhattan store has provided quite an educational experience in customer relations. I'm en route by helicopter, Hendricks said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. Don't move. Don't leave. We'll handle this immediately. The call ended. Silence stretched through the boutique like a death shroud. Webb's face had gone gray. That was actually the CEO? Dorothy nodded pleasantly. Charles and I serve on several charity boards together. Columbia University Trustees. Metropolitan Museum. Lovely man, though he has quite a temper when his companies embarrass him publicly. Phillips dropped the Centurion card. It clattered against marble flooring like a gunshot in the silence. Rodriguez picked up the card, examining it with professional interest. American Express Centurion. These require 16 million minimum net worth and invitation only. Very exclusive. Probably stolen, Webb whispered desperately, grasping at his last straw. Martinez pulled out his radio. Dispatch, I need a credit verification on Dorothy Washington. I also need a background check and verification of American Express Centurion cardholder status. No need, officer, Dorothy said quietly. She pulled out her driver's license and handed it to Martinez. Everything should match perfectly. The sergeant studied the ID carefully. then looked at Dorothy, then back at the card. Name, address, photograph, everything aligned flawlessly. Ma'am, do you wish to press charges for assault and battery? Dorothy considered the question while Webb's world collapsed in real time. 47,000 people waited for her answer, the live stream audience growing by hundreds every minute. Yes, she said simply. I absolutely do. Martinez turned to Webb with the mechanical precision of a man who'd made thousands of arrests. Sir, you're under arrest for assault in the 3rd degree. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The Miranda rights echoed through premier fashion as handcuffs clicked around Webb's wrists. The sound seemed to break some kind of spell. Customers who'd been frozen in fascination suddenly remembered they had phones, lives, appointments elsewhere. But none of them left. This was better than television. Phillips watched her boss transform from authority figure to criminal in 60 seconds. Her own hands still trembled as she stared at the Centurion card lying on marble like an accusation. Wait, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the commotion. Wait, this can't be real. Rodriguez began photographing the scene for evidence while Martinez processed Webb. The live stream count hit 52,000 viewers. Comments flooded past faster than human eyes could follow. Justice served billionaire revenge. Karen is next. This is beautiful. Morrison's phone rang again. This time she answered. Rachel? The voice belonged to David Park, Regional Operations Director. What the hell is happening at your location? Corporations are losing their minds. Sir, we have a situation. A situation? You have a goddamn viral video showing our employee assaulting a customer. The board is watching this live. Morrison moved away from the cameras, but Dorothy's enhanced hearing caught every word. Corporate boards didn't typically monitor individual store incidents unless something catastrophic was unfolding. Who is she? Morrison whispered into the phone. Who is Dorothy Washington? The question hung in recycled air like incense. Dorothy's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Charles, ETA 3 minutes. Prepare for full disclosure. She smiled, the expression transforming her weathered features into something almost predatory. Officers, she said pleasantly, before we proceed further, I should probably provide some context. Martinez looked up from his paperwork. Ma'am? I haven't been entirely forthcoming about my relationship with this establishment. Dorothy reached into her cardigan, withdrawing a leather portfolio that had somehow survived the assault. Mr. Webb and Ms. Phillips made assumptions based on my appearance. I thought it might be educational to let those assumptions play out. She opened the portfolio, revealing documents that made Morrison's knees buckle. Washington Holdings owns 67% of Lux Retail Group, Dorothy announced calmly. Lux Retail Group owns Premier Fashion. Transitively, I own this store. The silence was deafening. Zoe's phone nearly slipped from her trembling hands. Dad, did she just say, She owns the company, Robert confirmed, his financial analyst brain processing the implications at light speed. Holy shit, she owns the entire company. Phillips made a sound like a deflating balloon. Webb, still in handcuffs, turned ashen. More specifically, Dorothy continued, her voice taking on the crisp authority of a boardroom presentation, Washington Holdings controls $140 million in corporate debt for Lux Retail Group. We hold the primary mortgages on 47 store locations, including this one. We also manage the pension fund for your employees. Morrison's phone slipped from nerveless fingers, clattering to the floor. In layman's terms, Dorothy explained to the officers, who looked increasingly bewildered, I have the legal authority to close this store, terminate every employee, and call in debts that would bankrupt the entire chain within 72 hours. Rodriguez stopped taking photographs. Ma'am, are you saying you could shut down? All of it, Dorothy confirmed. 47 locations, 1,200 employees. Gone. The live stream comments exploded into digital chaos. Viewer count approached 60,000. News outlets were already running breaking news banners. Billionaire owns company that assaulted her. "But why?" Phillips whispered, her voice cracking. "Why didn't you say something? Why let us—" "Because," Dorothy replied, "I wanted to see how you treat customers you perceive as inferior. I needed to understand the culture you've created in my stores." She gestured to her swollen cheek, the dried blood, the scattered belongings that revealed her true status only to those who knew how to look. Every year, Washington Holdings conducts surprise evaluations of our retail investments. We send mystery shoppers to assess customer service, employee behavior, and company culture. Dorothy's smile turned razor-sharp. Today, I was the mystery shopper. Webb made a strangled sound through the handcuffs. "The dress code was deliberate," Dorothy continued, almost lecturing now. "Modest clothing, comfortable shoes, careful examination of merchandise. I wanted to present as someone you might stereotype as unable to afford luxury goods." Morrison found her voice. You planned this?" "I planned to observe," Dorothy corrected. "You planned the assault. You planned the discrimination. You planned the humiliation. I simply documented it." She pulled out her phone, showing the screen to the officers. "I've been recording audio since I entered the store. Everything is documented. Every slur, every assumption, every violation of basic human dignity." The helicopter's approach became audible, a distant thrumming that grew steadily louder. Through the boutique's windows, they could see news vans arriving, reporters setting up cameras. "Mrs. Washington," Martinez said carefully, "are you saying this was some kind of sting operation?" "Corporate evaluation," Dorothy replied, though it became a criminal matter the moment Mr. Webb chose violence over professionalism. The helicopter noise intensified. Through the skylight, they could see it beginning to descend toward the building's roof landing pad. Phillips sank into a nearby chair, her face buried in her hands. "My career is over. My life is over." "Your career ended the moment you chose cruelty over kindness," Dorothy replied without sympathy. "Your life? That's up to you, but you'll never work in retail again." Morrison's second phone started ringing, then her smartwatch, then the store's landline. The corporate avalanche had become a tsunami. "How much power do you actually have?" Rodriguez asked, his curiosity overcoming protocol. Dorothy considered the question. "Washington Holdings is worth $2.3 billion. We own commercial real estate in 48 states, residential developments in 67 cities, and retail partnerships with 112 major brands." She paused, letting the numbers sink in. "Premier fashion represents approximately 8% of our retail portfolio. Losing it would be inconvenient, not catastrophic. For you, however—" She shrugged eloquently. The helicopter was directly overhead now. Its rotor was visible through skylights as it settled onto the landing pad. "Charles is here," Dorothy announced unnecessarily. "He's going to want explanations. I'd suggest you prepare honest ones." Webb, still handcuffed and facing criminal charges, finally found his voice. "Why? Why destroy us like this? We're just working people trying to make a living." Dorothy studied him with the patience of someone who'd spent decades evaluating human character. "You struck a 67-year-old woman across the face because you assumed she was beneath you," she replied quietly. "You used racial slurs because you thought no one with power would care. You kicked my belongings and called me worthless because you believed there would be no consequences." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the boutique. "I didn't destroy you, Mr. Webb. I simply removed the protection you thought you had. You destroyed yourself the moment you chose hatred over humanity." The helicopter's engines wound down. Heavy footsteps echoed from the stairwell leading to the roof access. Charles Hendricks was coming. and Dorothy Washington, mystery shopper, assault victim, and owner of everything Webb had thought he controlled, waited with the patience of someone who held all the cards. The real show was about to begin. The stairwell door burst open with corporate fury. Charles Hendricks entered like a financial hurricane 6'2", silver-haired, wearing a hand-tailored suit that cost more than most people's cars. His face carried the controlled rage of a CEO, watching his company's stock price crater in real time. Behind him came Jennifer Walsh, Dorothy's executive assistant, carrying a tablet displaying live market data. Lux Retail Group had dropped 18% in 47 minutes. "Dorothy," Hendricks said, his voice tight with barely restrained emotion. "Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine, Charles." Dorothy touched her swollen cheek almost dismissively. "Though your management team has provided quite an education in corporate culture." Hendricks's eyes swept the scene with military precision. Handcuffed store manager, terrified staff, police officers, 63,000 people watching via live stream. His worst nightmare, playing out in high definition. "Officers," he addressed Martinez and Rodriguez. "I'm Charles Hendricks, CEO of Lux Retail Group. What charges are being filed?" "Assault in the third degree against Mr. Webb," Martinez replied. "Mrs. Washington has also indicated potential theft charges against Ms. Phillips." Hendricks turned to Phillips, who was still clutching Dorothy's Centurion card like a lifeline. "You took her credit card?" I thought it was stolen," Phillips whispered. "You thought a 67-year-old woman stole an American Express Centurion card requiring $16 million minimum net worth?" Hendricks's voice carried the precision of a cross-examination. Phillips had no answer. Jennifer approached Dorothy with professional efficiency. "Mrs. Washington, the board is monitoring the situation. Legal has prepared 3 scenarios for damage control." "No damage control," Dorothy replied firmly. "Full transparency, complete accountability." She turned to address the live stream directly, looking into Zoe's camera with commanding presence. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dorothy Washington, founder and CEO of Washington Holdings. What you've witnessed today represents a fundamental failure of corporate leadership and human decency." The comment stream exploded. Viewer count hit 71,000. Washington Holdings controls significant equity positions in retail, hospitality, and real estate sectors across North America. Our investments generate employment for over 15,000 people and serve millions of customers annually. Hendricks watched in fascination as Dorothy transformed from assault victim to corporate commander. This was why she'd built a fortune: the ability to seize control of any narrative. Today's incident reveals systemic problems within companies we've trusted with our investment. Problems that require immediate and comprehensive solutions. Morrison finally found her voice. "Mrs. Washington, if we'd known who you were, you'd have treated me differently?" Dorothy's interruption carried ice-cold judgment. "That's precisely the problem, Miss Morrison. Customer service shouldn't depend on net worth. Human dignity shouldn't require financial qualification." She gestured to her scattered belongings, now collected but still evidence of the assault. "Every customer deserves the respect you would show a billionaire. Every human being deserves the courtesy you would show your CEO. The fact that you don't understand this demonstrates complete leadership failure." Hendricks stepped forward, his corporate instincts engaging. "Dorothy, what do you need from us to resolve this situation?" "Resolution?" Dorothy laughed, the sound lacking any warmth. "Charles, resolution assumes this was an accident. This was institutional racism captured in high definition and broadcast to 71,000 witnesses." Jennifer consulted her tablet. 73,000 now. CNN is picking up the feed. The numbers were staggering. Corporate crisis managers trained for years to handle disasters 1/10 this size. "Here are my non-negotiable requirements," Dorothy announced, her voice carrying boardroom authority that made everyone stand straighter. "First, immediate termination of Marcus Webb, Karen Phillips, and Rachel Morrison. No severance. No positive references. Permanent blacklisting from retail management positions. Morrison's face crumpled. Please, I have children. You should have considered them before enabling assault, Dorothy replied without sympathy. Second, public corporate apology acknowledging systemic racism and pledging comprehensive reform. This apology will reference the assault specifically and accept full liability for employee criminal conduct. Hendricks nodded grimly. The legal implications were catastrophic, but denial would be worse. Third, immediate implementation of bias awareness training for all employees, with quarterly refresher courses and annual certification requirements. Failure to complete training results in automatic termination. Jennifer took notes rapidly, calculating implementation costs in real time. Fourth, installation of customer interaction monitoring systems in all 47 locations. AI analysis will flag discriminatory language, behavior patterns, and bias indicators for immediate review. The technology existed. IBM and Microsoft had developed retail monitoring solutions specifically for this purpose. Cost, approximately $2 million across all locations. Fifth, diverse hiring mandates for all management positions. 40% minority representation within 18 months, with progress reports submitted monthly to Washington Holdings. Phillips whimpered audibly. The industry would never hire her again. 40 years old with a criminal record and public humiliation. Sixth, establishment of a customer dignity fund. $5 million annually for civil rights organizations focused on retail discrimination. This fund will be managed independently and reported publicly. Hendricks's mental calculator was running constantly. Training costs, technology implementation, legal settlements, monitoring systems, diversity initiatives, minimum $50 million in first-year expenses. Seventh, personal restitution. Mr. Webb will pay $50,000 in civil damages. Ms. Phillips and Ms. Morrison will each pay $25,000 for enabling and supporting discriminatory conduct. The amounts weren't financially devastating to the company, but they were personally catastrophic to the individuals involved. And finally, Dorothy's voice took on the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence, complete restructuring of corporate leadership accountability. Any future discrimination incidents will result in immediate termination of regional directors, regardless of their direct involvement. She looked directly at Hendricks. Including you, Charles. The CEO's composure cracked slightly. His own job was now contingent on the behavior of 1,200 employees across 47 locations. Dorothy, these requirements would fundamentally restructure our entire operational model. Yes, she agreed pleasantly. That's the point. Rodriguez had been listening with increasing amazement. Ma'am, what happens if they refuse your demands? Dorothy smiled, and everyone in the boutique felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. Washington Holdings would immediately recall $340 million in corporate debt. Lux Retail Group would enter bankruptcy proceedings within 72 hours. All 47 locations would close permanently. 1,200 employees would lose their jobs. She checked her damaged Patek Philippe. The stock price would collapse completely. Supplier contracts would terminate automatically. Real estate leases would default simultaneously. The live stream audience had grown to 84,000 people. Financial news networks were running continuous coverage. In trading rooms across Manhattan, analysts were already shorting retail stocks. Alternatively, Dorothy continued, full compliance with my requirements allows business to continue normally. Employees keep their jobs. Shareholders maintain their investments. Everyone wins, except those who choose discrimination over professionalism. Hendricks realized he was witnessing a masterclass in corporate warfare. Dorothy had maneuvered him into a position where compliance was the only viable option. "What's your timeline for implementation?" he asked, already knowing he'd lost. 72 hours for personnel terminations and public apology, 30 days for training program implementation, 90 days for technology installation, 6 months for diversity hiring initiatives. Jennifer was calculating frantically. Mrs. Washington, the technology procurement alone typically requires— Then expedite it, Dorothy interrupted. Microsoft and IBM both have retail monitoring solutions ready for immediate deployment. Cost is irrelevant compared to bankruptcy. Webb, still in handcuffs, finally grasped the scope of his catastrophe. You're destroying thousands of jobs because I made one mistake? Dorothy turned to him with the patience of a teacher addressing a particularly slow student. Mr. Webb, you committed a criminal assault based on racial prejudice. That wasn't a mistake. It was a choice that revealed your character and the culture that enabled you. She gestured to the cameras, the police, the corporate executives scrambling to contain a disaster. I'm not destroying jobs. I'm demanding accountability. Every employee who treats customers with dignity and respect will keep their position. Only those who choose discrimination will face consequences. The helicopter's engines started spinning up again, preparing for departure. Charles, Dorothy said, her tone returning to business formality, I need your answer. Full compliance or corporate liquidation. You have 60 seconds to decide. Hendricks looked around the boutique at the police officers, the viral live stream, the employees whose careers were ending, the reporters gathering outside. He thought about 1,200 employees, their families, their mortgages and children's college funds. He thought about shareholders, pension funds, and investment portfolios. He thought about Dorothy Washington's reputation for never bluffing. Full compliance, he said quietly. Dorothy nodded with satisfaction. Excellent choice. Jennifer will coordinate implementation details with your legal team. She collected her belongings with dignified precision, then paused at the boutique entrance. Ladies and gentlemen, she addressed the live stream audience one final time, what you've witnessed today proves that accountability is possible. Justice may be delayed, but it doesn't have to be denied. The viewer count had reached 91,000 people. Change begins when we refuse to accept hatred as normal. It succeeds when we demand better from those who serve us. She smiled at the camera, her swollen cheek serving as evidence of both cruelty and consequence. Thank you for witnessing this moment. Use your voices. Demand dignity. Create change. Dorothy Washington walked out of Premier Fashion Boutique with the quiet confidence of someone who'd just restructured an entire industry. Behind her, the ruins of 3 careers served as proof that actions have consequences, even for those who thought they were untouchable. 6 hours later, the news cycle moved with digital velocity. By sunset, Dorothy's assault had become the lead story on every major network. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and international outlets ran continuous coverage of the slap that changed retail. Webb sat in a holding cell at Manhattan Central Booking, his mugshot already circulating on social media alongside freeze frames of the assault. The contrast was devastating, a middle-aged white man in handcuffs versus a dignified elderly black woman with a swollen face. His wife had stopped answering his calls after the 3rd news interview. Phillips cleaned out her desk under police supervision, her 20-year retail career ending in a cardboard box of personal items. Her termination letter cited criminal conduct, discriminatory behavior, and theft of customer property. The Centurion card incident had been captured in perfect detail. Legal analysts on cable news explained how her refusal to return the card constituted theft under New York law. Morrison's corporate apartment was already listed for sale. Blacklisted from retail management, facing personal bankruptcy from legal fees, she'd become a cautionary tale taught in business schools within hours. Meanwhile, at Lux Retail Group headquarters, the emergency board meeting lasted 14 hours. Charles Hendricks presented Dorothy's demands to 12 increasingly panicked directors while stock prices fluctuated wildly on international markets. Gentlemen, we have a simple choice, Hendricks announced to the boardroom. Comply completely or watch our company cease to exist by Thursday. Board member Patricia Collins reviewed the financial projections. Charles, these demands will cost us $47 million in the first year alone. Bankruptcy would cost us $2 billion, Hendricks replied. Dorothy Washington doesn't bluff. She's been buying our debt for 3 years. She owns us. The vote was unanimous, full compliance. The public apology, 9 p.m. Eastern. Hendricks appeared on live television from corporate headquarters, his usual confidence replaced by visible humility. Behind him, the Lux Retail Group logo seemed smaller, diminished. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Charles Hendricks, CEO of Lux Retail Group. I'm here to address the inexcusable assault of Mrs. Dorothy Washington at our premier fashion location. He paused, consulting notes that legal had spent 6 hours crafting. What happened today was not an isolated incident. It was the result of systemic failures in leadership, training, and corporate culture. We failed Mrs. Washington. We failed our customers. We failed our own values. The teleprompter displayed words that would reshape an industry. Effective immediately, Lux Retail Group is implementing the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program in retail history. The Dorothy Washington Protocol will serve as our new standard for customer service and human dignity. The protocol implementation. Next 72 hours. Microsoft's retail monitoring team worked around the clock installing AI systems in all 47 premier fashion locations. The technology analyzed voice patterns, body language, and customer interaction data for bias indicators. Every conversation was recorded. Every gesture was evaluated. Every microaggression was flagged for immediate review. IBM's diversity consultants arrived at corporate headquarters with detailed implementation plans. Mandatory bias training began immediately for all employees. Failure to pass certification tests resulted in automatic termination. The hiring mandate proved more challenging. Qualified minority candidates were scarce in luxury retail management, a shortage that revealed decades of systemic exclusion. Hendricks authorized signing bonuses of $75,000 to attract diverse talent from competitors. Within a week, Premier Fashion had become the most sought-after employer for minority retail professionals. Webb's sentencing, 30 days later. Manhattan Criminal Court was packed with reporters as Marcus Webb appeared for sentencing. His guilty plea to assault charges had made headlines, but the judge's words would make history. Mr. Webb, Judge Maria Santos announced, your actions represent more than simple assault. You attacked not just Mrs. Washington, but the principles of dignity and equality that define our society. Webb stood in an orange jumpsuit, his retail manager's confidence long gone. His wife had filed for divorce. His children refused to visit. His LinkedIn profile had been deleted after thousands of negative comments. 6 months in Rikers Island, followed by 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service with civil rights organizations. Additionally, you are permanently banned from any customer service role in New York State. The gavel fell with finality. Webb was led away in shackles while reporters shouted questions he couldn't answer. Phillips received 90 days in county jail and was ordered to pay $25,000 in restitution. Morrison got probation and community service, her $25,000 fine forcing the sale of her Manhattan condo. The transformation. 90 days later, Dorothy's first return visit to Premier Fashion made international news. Protesters lined Fifth Avenue, not against her, but supporting her mission. Signs read, "Dignity for All" and "Thank you, Dorothy." The store had been completely renovated. Diverse staff members wore pins reading, "Respect every customer." Customer service stations displayed bias reporting information in 12 languages. New manager Keisha Thompson, a 34-year-old black woman with an MBA from Wharton, personally greeted Dorothy at the entrance. "Mrs. Washington, welcome back to Premier Fashion. How may we serve you today?" Dorothy smiled, examining the same $3,200 Hermes bag that had triggered the assault. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. "I'd like to purchase this bag, please. And I'd like to pay with my Centurion card." Thompson processed the transaction with professional grace, thanking Dorothy for her business and asking about gift wrapping preferences. No assumptions, no suspicious glances, no whispered comments, just respect. The ripple effect. 6 months later. The Dorothy Washington Foundation had distributed $15 million to civil rights organizations focused on retail discrimination. Cases of documented bias dropped by 67% across all Lux Retail Group locations. Other retail chains began implementing similar protocols voluntarily, fearing their own viral disasters. Nordstrom, Saks, and Bergdorf Goodman launched comprehensive bias training programs. Business schools added the premier fashion case study to their curricula. Dorothy regularly spoke at Columbia, Harvard, and Wharton about ethical leadership and corporate accountability. Webb's assault video had been viewed 47 million times across all platforms. His name became synonymous with the consequences of discrimination, a cautionary tale told in diversity seminars worldwide. The personal cost and victory. Phillips worked at a grocery store in Queens. Her retail management career permanently ended. She'd lost her apartment, her savings, and most of her friends. The viral video followed her everywhere. Morrison moved to Portland, taking a job at a non-profit focused on homelessness. The work was meaningful, but paid 60% less than her previous salary. She'd learned painful lessons about complicity and consequences. Webb was released after serving 4 months of his sentence. He found work in construction, his retail career forever closed. The assault conviction made employment difficult, but some contractors gave second chances. Dorothy kept the Hermes bag in her office as a reminder that justice, while sometimes delayed, could still be served. The $3,200 purchase had cost a fortune in reputation damage, but had bought something priceless: systematic change. Her assistant Jennifer calculated the total impact: 47 stores reformed, 1,200 employees retrained, millions of customers served with new dignity protocols. One slap had changed an industry. One woman's refusal to accept hatred had transformed corporate America. The mathematics of justice proved simple. Actions have consequences, even for those who think they're untouchable. 1 year later, Dorothy Washington sat in her corner office overlooking Central Park, the same Hermes bag displayed on her credenza like a trophy. The scar on her cheek had faded to an almost invisible line, but its impact would last forever. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Premier Fashion Report's record diversity metrics, customer satisfaction scores hit all-time high. The transformation had exceeded every projection. Employee retention improved 43%. Customer complaints dropped to near zero. Stock prices had recovered and climbed beyond pre-incident levels. More importantly, copycat reforms had spread across retail. Target, Walmart, and Macy's had implemented similar dignity protocols. The Dorothy effect had become industry standard. Webb had found work in construction, his assault conviction making most jobs impossible. He'd written her a letter of apology that she'd never answered. Some lessons came too late. Phillips managed a small boutique in New Jersey. Her dreams of luxury retail forever ended. She'd learned humility the hard way. Morrison ran a homeless shelter in Oregon, finding purpose in serving those overlooked by society. Perhaps that was justice too. Dorothy's foundation had expanded internationally, fighting discrimination in retail spaces across 6 continents. One viral moment had become a global movement. Her philosophy remained simple. Dignity isn't negotiable. Respect isn't conditional. Isn't. Change happens when we refuse to accept hatred as normal. Your turn to act. Have you witnessed discrimination in retail spaces? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice amplifies this movement. Subscribe to Black Tales Stories for more accounts of quiet power transforming unjust systems. Hit that notification bell to never miss stories of everyday heroes creating extraordinary change. Because every act of injustice contains the seeds of systematic transformation. And sometimes, The most powerful weapon against hatred is simply refusing to be silent. Share this story. Create change. Demand dignity.